I'm Matthew Beland. I'm the University Archivist here at Drew University. We're standing in the lowest level of Mead Hall, which is the main administration building here at Drew University. It's probably also the most famous and recognizable building here on campus. This building was built in the 1830s by William Gibbons for his family. But they weren't the only people who lived here. In the 1840 census, there is a line that says there were 14, and I quote, free colored persons living here. Why were they here? Well, to answer that question, we need to look at who William Gibbons was and what his family history was. William Gibbons was the son of Thomas Gibbons, who was born in the middle of the 18th century. He was a lawyer, a judge, and several times over mayor of Savannah, Georgia. Thomas Gibbons also owned no less than 9 rice and cotton plantations, and all the slaves in order to farm at those plantations. In the early 19th century, Thomas Gibbons came up north to what is now Elizabeth, New Jersey, with his family. He was interested in setting up steamboat lines in between New Jersey and New York. There's a famous Supreme Court case named after Gibbons, Gibbons versus Ogden. I won't go into that, but that all took place just before he died in 1826. He left all of his fortune to the favored heir, William Gibbons, the steamboat lines, the plantations, and 500 slaves, each of whom were worth anywhere from $500 to $1,000 each. In the United States, where there were few millionaires at the time, William Gibbons was one of them. William was not interested in steamboats. He sold the steamboat lines in 1829. His real passion was horse breeding and horse racing. So he was often on the look for pasture land to raise his growing house of stallions that he was breeding. And they lit upon this place, Bottle Hill at the time, before it was named Madison, as a great place to start a family, to build a house, and to live a lavish lifestyle. And so that's what they did. In 1832, William Gibbons started buying up land in this area, including 200 or so acres, part of where we're standing right now, in order to build a house. The house was built from 1833 to 1836. The family moved here in 1836. But again, they're not the only people here. We have our 14 free colored persons. In 1840s New Jersey, they weren't slaves per se, but they probably weren't treated much better than house slaves were in the plantations back down in Savannah. The rest of the story for the Gibbons here in this house is actually one of diminishment. Abigail, the wife of William Gibbons, died in 1844, and William didn't spend as much time here as he used to, preferring to spend time in New York City and in Savannah. He died in 1852, leaving his entire family's fortune to his only son, William Hayward Gibbons. William Hayward didn't like this house much either. He preferred to be down in Savannah or to travel up to New England. The only person living here, mostly in the 1850s, was the unmarried daughter, Caroline. She herself died in 1857. After that, William Hayward Gibbons left this house essentially shuttered, except for probably descendants and the individuals listed in the 1840 census taking care of this house. Good Southerner, William Hayward Gibbons fought for the South in the Civil War and lost most of the family fortune in that process, having chosen the losing side. We have an interesting document in the University Archives, a pardon from Andrew Johnson, the president, to William Hayward Gibbons, which allowed the pardoned trader to come back north and dispose of whatever property he had, including this place. And so in 1867, William Hayward Gibbons sold this property, this house, and all the part that is now Drew University to Daniel Drew, who then sold it to the Methodist Episcopal Church for $1, essentially a donation, to form Drew Theological Seminary. William Hayward Gibbons died in 1887, and William Gibbons, Abigail Gibbons, Caroline Gibbons, and William Hayward Gibbons are actually all buried just at the other side of Morristown in a Presbyterian cemetery just past the Stop and Shop at the top of the hill. What can we say then about all the inhabitants who lived here and those who walked these halls? I think we have to keep two notions of this place, of its identity, of its people, in tension with one another. On one hand, we have Mead Hall, a building named after Roxanna Mead Drew, Daniel's wife, a building that for 150 years has been a seat of learning, a place where thousands have come to learn to share the gospel message of Christ. 1867 is in some ways a redemption of sorts, or a trajectory towards redemption, away from the Southern slavocracy to the hands of the Methodist Episcopal Church. Many of the early faculty here had abolitionist sentiments. But at the same time, as we celebrate this place as Mead Hall, it also is the Gibbons Mansion. Also a beautiful building, but one that in the 1830s would not have been possible had it not been for the Gibbons family fortune passed down through a century or so. A fortune made in Savannah on 9 plantations, made by hundreds of slaves working in the cotton and rice fields. Some of those individuals were brought up here to serve in this household. And many stayed on working for the seminary. Even up until the 1890s, we have stories of faculty members here knowing some of the people that still worked here with the Gibbons family. Not only is there a tension between the names of the two buildings, but also the physical space itself. Those of you who've seen the upstairs know what a beautiful building this is. The gilt mirrors, the beautiful mahogany balustrade, the high ceilings, plenty of light in from windows. Contrast with this space here. We've been able to light some of the lights here, but much of the other space is very dark. Drew University has done its best to make this place look nice, but let's face it, it's a cellar. It's dark. The ceilings are much lower. You have a feeling of claustrophobia. It would have been very cold in the winter months. So we have to wrestle with these two identities of this space in order for us to fully understand the history of this